Welcome to the Bring It On Home podcast. I'm Frankie V, former Sydney and London resident, now living in Nashville, Tennessee. This podcast features interviews with the various characters I come across in my travels through the music heartland of the American South. This podcast is recorded in July of 2019 with much-loved local Nashville resident JC Jones. JC has lived in Nashville, Tennessee for most of his life. You wouldn't know JC's in his 70s if you saw him rocking and rolling on a Saturday night at Robert's Western World. JC experienced the early $3 Elvis shows, as he likes to call them, in the 50s and came of age during the birth of rock and roll. Hope you sit back and enjoy this show. We start by asking JC about dancing, as that's a big part of JC's life.
When did you start dancing?
Actually, I came to it kind of late. I dance all the time now, but, I don't know, 30 years ago, something like that.
But kids in the 50s, you would see them dance.
Yeah. And I loved the music. The music always moved me inside. But I was so shy, I wouldn't actually get up and dance with them.
But knowing what you know now about all the dance styles, what were the kids doing in Nashville at that time?
Well, they were doing the bop, which is almost the same as East Coast swing.
Okay. So that's what they were all doing. And they just learn. How would they learn?
Watching American Bandstand. Excuse me. Yeah, that's how they learn.
And they were just held in school halls or
gymnasiums. School parties would be at school gymnasium.
Usually a live band or
usually
radio,
recorded
DJ?
music.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Someone would actually drop records.
Mm-hmm.
So there were DJs even then.
Yes.
Wow.
The live music would be more like at a state fair or county fair or National Guard Armory. You'd have to go somewhere like that usually to hear the live music.
Did rock and roll and race music drown out country music at the time, or was it how did it all sort of play out? All the different styles.
The race music kind of laid the ground for rock and roll, and then there was kind of a hybrid rockabilly.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hybrid of rock and hillbilly or country music.
And how big was that? How big was
rockabilly? Was very big, but it had a fairly short span of being real popular, even though still today there's many rockabilly bands and rockabilly shows that you can go to.
It's because Elvis went to the army? Is it when Elvis went to the army that rockabilly kind of went to Germany?
No, I think it started before that.
Even then you can see. What were they moving towards?
It was just like the country artists kind of began to become eclipsed with this new music. And they didn't want to be left behind, so they incorporated some of the early rock and roll sounds into their country music, and it became rockabilly.
And what about picking parties and bluegrass? How was that like in Nashville? Was that prominent as well around that time, or?
It wasn't prominent, but it did happen.
More on the outskirts, in rural areas?
Yes.
Because I guess Nashville was the big city.
Well, yes, to people in Tennessee it was. Close, nearly 500,000, and then 1 million with the surrounding areas included in the metropolitan area.
So what about Jefferson Street then? What was that like? This was the Chitlin circuit, right?
You're talking about the time of segregation. And actually when the black artists came to Nashville, like Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and so forth, that's where they played.
Charlie Pride.
He was kind of crossover. I think he played the opera.
He was country.
He
played the venues where other white artists played.
Right. Yeah.
But the early black rock and roll artists, there was a place called the New Era Club on Jefferson Street, and that was the main place that they played.
How far down on Jefferson? Are we talking down towards?
Not very far down, like near where I-440 crosses Jefferson now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So where there's that old little blues history museum, which I haven't yet been to. So just I mean to, but wow, it was there.
It
Before
was there
rather than afterwards. Okay, because
yes, and very few white people went because it was a time of segregation.
Would there be the exception, like depending on who?
I went.
You did? All right.
And it was wonderful. I loved it.
Okay, who did you go for?
I went for Bo Diddley. I went for Chuck Berry, Little Richard.
Oh my God! You saw Little Richard?
Oh yeah.
What year are we talking? Like?
Oh, we're talking like 60, early 60s, primarily. Yeah, in the 60s.
Before he had that. I hear stories. I think he started to go back to religion around at some point, and then started selling Bibles that I think promoted the African American characters in the Bible and stuff. He went on a very kind of he sort of always swayed between rock being the devil's music and rock, and going with the rock. So he was doing, what sort of music was he playing?
It was straight up rock and roll at the time.
And what did that sound like in that club? What was the sound?
It was awesome. It was an old building with old sprung wood floors and hollow under the floor, just like it was made for sound. It wasn't, but it worked perfect,
And what was the dancing like in there? Did people dance, or was it too busy?
It was different. They weren't doing the bop like the white teenagers were, but they were sure having a good time.
And could you describe what they were doing? Was it just more fluid?
Yes. That would be a good way to describe it.
Okay.
Less formalized. Yes.
Interesting.
Little Richard, I after he did get into gospel music and was selling Bibles, there used to be a chain of drugstores called Super X drugstores, and they were always beside a Kroger supermarket. And I walked into one day, and as soon as I walked in, there was Little Richard. And he was selling the Bibles that you mentioned.
Did you buy one?
No, but I talked to him for a few minutes.
What did he tell you? What did you ask him?
And he didn't mind at all that I didn't buy a Bible. He was perfectly happy to talk until maybe a paying customer came through the door, and then he turned his attention to them.
And can you remember what you asked him?
I really can't. I was just telling him how much I loved his music and admired his music. Just that sort of thing.
Okay, so that was what, in a Kroger's?
In a Super X drugstore adjacent to a Kroger supermarket.
Just somewhere around here.
Yeah, in East Nashville.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. I never had any idea that was going to happen that day.
I wonder if you may have even when you saw Little Richard here, I wondered maybe if Jimi Hendrix was in his band at that point.
I don't know. I didn't hear.
He was for a small period of time.
I didn't become acquainted with Jimi Hendrix till later.
Well, yeah.
So I don't know. I really don't know. I heard just the other day a recording that Little Richard did in New Orleans. I'd never been aware that he had a New Orleans connection.
Yeah, he recorded Tutti Frutti there.
Oh, and I heard another one that he recorded there as well. So.
You can still go. It's a laundromat just on the park. Out on the park side of the French Quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tracked it down a few times and gone in, and I've danced to Tutti Frutti in that place where they recorded it. It was Cosimo. What was his name? Oh, I can't think of it but there was a famous recorder.
Yes, and when I heard it played, they were interviewing him Saturday night, and he was very humble, and he gave all the credit to the musicians. he said there were a lot of great musicians that made him look really good,
Mhm.
and he felt like his job was to get out of the way and let them do their thing.
A lot of people would say Little Richard's kind of ground zero, more so than, would you agree, having seen Little Richard and Chuck Berry, like from your experience from seeing them at a kind of pivotal time, like which one would you say was the most influential? Could you tell from seeing them?
Chuck Berry.
Really? That's interesting. So do tell, seeing Chuck Berry live.
Well, it's amazing. It was amazing to see him on TV, but seeing him live just carried it to a whole new level.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Doing the duck walk and all that.
And the crowds, the way they reacted to
They
these
go
people.
wild, a lot like they did with Elvis.
And you how many white people were in these?
Usually not many. Usually very few, at least in the early years.
Mhm. Okay. You just go down yourself.
Yeah, no problem. I never had any problem whatsoever. I was respectful. They were nice to me, and it was obvious how I loved the music. I think that gave us a common ground.
But you didn't see other artists, maybe like Johnny Cash we mentioned, and you didn't see other kind of musicians at the time down there like taking crib notes and stuff from.
No, I never saw that. I understood that Jerry Lee Lewis did that at black clubs. He would go and listen outside to a juke joint
I think Elvis
where
too.
he grew up, and he picked up a lot there, but I never witnessed that myself.
Mhm. Okay. What about, so if we go away from the rockabilly and the rock and roll, which is really hard to do, but the cowboy artists like Hank Williams and stuff, like what sort of exposure did, I guess he died, 1949, 1950 maybe?
I think it was 56. I'm not absolutely certain, but I think it was 56.
I feel like it
maybe
was early.
54, but
Only
it was
reason I
mid
say that,
50s.
'cause I think Johnny Cash was in the army at the time he found out that Hank died.
Oh,
And then he moved to Memphis, and then he was started on Sun. So it probably
Mhm.
would have been before, early 50s, before the Sun stuff kicked off. So, I mean, did you ever get any exposure to Hank Williams?
say again?
Did you get any exposure to Hank Williams?
I just heard Hank Williams on the radio and liked him a lot. The first song I ever remember hearing on the radio was "I Saw the Light" by Hank Williams, which I thought was kind of pivotal for me going into photography, since that's all about light.
But when did you go into photography? You already had it in your mind.
Self-taught.
But you already had it in your mind to go in at around that time.
No, I just enjoyed it. It was just a hobby at that time.
I'm going to ask, but did you take photos of any of this stuff that you went to, any of these concerts?
Well, Jerry Lee Lewis, his manager, I photographed him at the Tennessee State Fair, and his manager said I made the best picture ever made of him on stage.
What?
You still have the negatives and stuff?
I do.
Of course.
Yeah, we're not even going down the road of you being a Music Row photographer, pre your NASCAR photography, right? So even then
I did. Yes, I worked for the 5 biggest record companies on Music Row at that time, which at that time was RCA, Epic, Columbia, Capitol, and Mercury Records. Of course, it's different now.
And you would just take promotional photography, or like?
Yes.
And so did you curate it, like you see rock photographers, or did you just...
I did not. It was early in my career, and really away from it to make money doing something I enjoyed doing was being around the artist.
What do you get from being? I mean, sometimes I wonder, like being around the artists. You see the performance, and what do you get on top of seeing the performance? That what do we miss out on by not being the photographers?
Well, being around them when they're off stage their guard is down. They're not trying to look good and please an audience and everything. They're just being themselves. And it's a completely different experience to be around them under those circumstances. And very enjoyable to me. And most of them, they don't want to be treated like prima donnas or anything. They really want you to treat them just like a ordinary person. Because they are. They just happen to become celebrities,
But celebrity didn't mean the same thing it does now, kind of thing, in a way.
No, it didn't.
I feel like talking to people were very conscious then of how fleeting it was. And so they're much more it's hard to explain, but
They were appreciative of their audience.
yeah.
Because you're right, they did know it could be gone at a moment.
And then back to
That's
their normal
one thing
jobs.
about country music is with country and Cajun and Zydeco music, the fans are loyal, and the artists tend to have long careers. And in rock, a few last for long careers, but not many are fortunate enough to do that.
So, who did you photograph in the 70s? Waylon? Willie? I know you photographed Dolly.
All of those, and the Oak Ridge Boys, and there was on Music Row in Nashville
He'll turn off, right?
at WNO Radio Studios. There was a program they started. It actually started in Southern California, in Los Angeles. And the idea was every Thursday night they would have two different country superstars in for an interview and play their music for an hour and a half, 45 minutes for each artist. But they couldn't get enough stars in Los Angeles. So they moved it to Nashville, and I was asked to photograph it. And it was really wonderful when they were playing the music. The DJ and the artist and myself were the only ones in the studio. So we just sit and talk like we're just sitting and talking now. And that was what I considered to be a wonderful experience.
And you probably couldn't say who your favorite was from all this.
No, I wouldn't want to. And, if I had one favorite, but I really didn't. I like so many of them.
And they all probably had different. I mean,
Waylon was awesome.
Waylon Jennings? Oh my god, I can only imagine. Why was he awesome? I mean, did you ask him about like Buddy Holly and Texas and stuff, or
A little bit. He didn't seem very comfortable talking about that. So I
it's because of
mentioned
the
it.
plane, right? Because I guess he was meant to
He
be on
gave
that
up
plane.
his seat to the big bumper. Sure did.
Amazing.
Yep.
I wonder, do you think maybe it looks like he changed after that. He was quite clean cut, but then, I'm sure they all just naturally changed.
And started the outlaw music,
Yeah.
him and Waylon, him and Willie. Yeah.
But, I mean, how would you describe Waylon? Like, deep, intense,
He's one of these
funny.
people that was pretty much the way off stage that he was on stage. He had just a pretty consistent persona.
I'd imagine most of them would in those days.
It just depended on the particular artist.
See, what I find funny, and I tell this to everybody, is like if you listen to the old recordings of Hank Williams, he'd spend half the time telling jokes, more than half the time, and then occasionally do a song, and then go back to telling stories. He'd rather... So, people aren't what we make them out to be. Like, we have this projection of them being, one way, and they're very much the opposite. Or, somehow with time we've remembered them in a certain way. So, Waylon wasn't in any way intimidating, being an outlaw and all that.
Well, yes, because he was such a superstar. When the outlaw music became so popular, But that was me. It wasn't him. He didn't try to be intimidating.
Do you remember when the famous Johnny Cash puts a finger up and, you know, puts that in the Nashville? Do you remember when that happened and what it was like then?
No, I really don't remember when that was.
But you remember it happening? The sort of
Yes.
reaction?
Oh, the picture went everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it was in just about every publication.
Was it how people were feeling here? Did people feel offended when how did people react to that, like here in Nashville?
I think they understood what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think they felt offended.
Mm-hmm.
He was giving his finger to the man, and who doesn't want to, if you're not the man? You know.
So it was a sign of the times. These guys were
Mm.
relevant and reflecting what was going on more broadly speaking.
And Johnny was so great with his television show. It was extremely popular, very high ratings, and he was very good to bring unknown artists
Mm-hmm.
onto the show. He insisted. I think it was on ABC TV, and he insisted with the network
Right.
that they let him do that.
Dylan, Christopherson, he did
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
What about like, you know, like for instance, living here, like Donald Trump's been in Nashville a couple of times since I've been here. Has there always been a relationship between I know Nixon was in town around that time. There's a lot of commentary around Nixon and Cash and whatnot. But did presidents come through town? Did like big politicians come through town?
Yes,
back then?
and several of them went to the Grand Ole Opry,
Mhm.
and not just in the audience, but on stage.
Yeah, right. I've seen Nixon.
Hmm
Do we get anyone else like JFK or?
I don't recall JFK, but Nixon's not the only one.
Carter, maybe President Carter.
I think Carter did. There's been one or two since Nixon as well.
Lyndon Johnson, maybe.
Maybe I just can't recall. But I do recall them being there.
So you felt that politicians knew the value of Nashville even then, as
Yes.
in terms of sending out a message to America and stuff. So
Yes.
you've always had the spotlight somewhat.
Yes. Yeah, the Grand Ole Opry and WSM radio is what really brought national attention
Mhm.
to country music.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, would you say that Nashville always knew what it was? Knew that it was this thing? Or at the time, people were just doing the stuff they were doing and, you know, to make some money and, you know, did they
Nashville's had a love-hate relationship with
With
country music.
with country music? Okay. Explain.
They embraced it. Well, when the Grand Ole Opry first became very popular, there were usually called barn dances. Chicago had one that was on the 50,000 watt radio station there and so forth.
the hayride.
KWKH in Shreveport, Louisiana had the barn dance. WWVA in Huntington, West Virginia had one. They were numerous at one time. But the one that survived was the Grand Ole Opry.
Mhm.
All the rest of them demised. And so Nashville embraced that and was very comfortable being known as Music City. And then there came a time where they didn't really want to be known as Music City. They thought it was limiting. You know, they wanted to be broader based, known for more than just the country music.
Fair enough.
Now, they're embracing it again. They love being Music City again.
No, I mean, like the thing I notice as a foreigner living here now for 4 years is that how entrepreneurial Tennessee is. Like, if you
Mhm.
dig, a lot of things come from Tennessee. You know, like you're talking about. Man, I think the first supermarket was a Piggly Wiggly's in Memphis. You know, like White Castle.
Piggly
Waffle
Wiggly
House.
was the first supermarket.
Right, in Memphis, Holiday Inn, you know, like another sort of Tennessee thing. Like, and if you go through Chattanooga, between Chattanooga, Memphis, you know, Knoxville and Nashville, tons of entrepreneurs. Like, there's always this entrepreneurial spirit in Tennessee. They're always trying to come up with ways to make money and stuff. And I still see it. Like, I still see people do. There's something about. I think that's tied up with music here in a big way. They're like businessmen, and then on top of that, they also pick. And so, oh yeah, we can make some money out of this as well. But they're not exclusively that. Sam Phillips wasn't that. Sam Phillips, he sold some records to Shelby, whatever his name, Singleton, I think, here. And he went off to buy more radio antennas to do radio shows, or So it was this kind of thing between entrepreneurship and I guess the love of music.
Well, no matter how much you love the music, you've still got to eat and have a roof over your head. And so it takes both.
Thanks for listening to the Bring It On Home podcast. For suggestions or questions, email us at diamondjive@gmail.com.